That's nice and bright, isn't it?
Wrong side of the camera, I have to say.
Yes, we don't like being this side of the camera.
Different.
Well, thank you, Nick. Thanks to everyone else for coming out and seeing it. Sexy and strange indeed. Yeah, it's fabulous. It's about the second time I've seen it properly as it's supposed to be seen, hopefully, and third time I've seen it. Yeah, fascinating film, and beautifully shot. So thank you.
So beautifully projected here.
Yeah. So, by your own admission earlier today, somewhat of an eclectic CV, I think is how you described your career. Starting with shooting, is it fair to say, fairly sort of avant-garde, music-related films with the likes of John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and
that was fairly late on.
It was?
Yeah, no, I started in documentaries, World in Actions.
Right.
And a lot of art programs. And then, then I went, worked quite a bit with John and Yoko.
Yes.
And a lot of promos.
Famously, the famous
Imagine, yes, The White Room. Yeah. The Ultravox O Vienna.
Right.
Which was another of my favourites.
They must have been formative years for music video.
Yes, I mean it was. We were sort of breaking ground, making kind of featurette movies in a very short amount of time, with very few resources.
I'm sure.
And I guess I kind of enjoyed that in a way. So I came up through all that and then worked on a lot of classical music and theatre, physical theatre with DV8 and people like that.
Right, yes.
That was, it was really intriguing stuff.
Yeah.
And slowly got more and more into dramas, over the years.
And some fairly esoteric films under your belt with things like Institute Benjamenta and films like that. Is it fair to say that, because this is the second film, I should point out, that you've shot for Peter Strickland, Barbarian Sound Studio being the last one, is it fair to say that it feels slightly like coming home for you in terms of the tone and the content? I know you feel that these films are incredibly important as films alone, and I'm sure you're very proud of your work on them. Does it?
Well, it's certainly the area and the zone that I enjoy most. I working with the brothers on Institute Benjamenta was a great experience. Working in black and white and pushing the look in that. And really that's, it was my relationship with them and the work that I've done with them that attracted Peter. He was, when he was setting up for Barbarian Sound Studio, he was working with Keith Griffiths, who was the producer, who'd worked with the Quays. And between them they said, well, I think Peter said, how about we use somebody like Nic Knowland? And Keith, of course, said, oh yeah, I think we know him. So that really came out of that. Right. And I think a lot of Peter's interests and tastes are in a sort of similar area.
So it was a producer that was the link between them, between you and the filmmakers.
Yes, yes. In a sense, Keith was, yes.
And when we were speaking in preparation for this discussion, there were a few shots that I'd pointed out. Notably, don't know who noticed it. I only noticed it the second time I saw it. But there's a tracking shot across the audience in the academic lecture, and there are I counted 3 mannequins, sort of like this, in the audience. And I said, what's happening? And you told me that was an in-joke between Cat's Eyes, who had done the wonderful music, and Peter. But you also said that there are a few points that referenced, or a few moves that referenced earlier work with the brothers Quay, and I was interested in that link between earlier work and how much you drew upon for working with Peter, and whether it was this film alone, you know.
I always thought the tracking shot across the audience when they're listening to the sound of the moths. We did a very similar shot in Institute Benjamenta, but I think actually the mannequins come from another movie. I mean,
Right.
Peter is a fantastic cineast. He knows so many films. Just
Right.
like, oh, I know very few.
Yes, I've just been working with a director like that. I sort of keep my
Yes.
head down. And
Well, that's right. Yeah, you have to be. So I found out latterly that's where the mannequins came from, a kind of like a homage in a way there. So
I see.
he's running two homages together with the Quays and the other filmmaker.
I see.
And I think you know, obviously he is referencing and influenced by the 70s, you know, Italian kind of movies a lot. So he's referencing in there, and one of the films we used as reference when we were talking about the Barbarian Sound Studio was a film called Moriana, that's about two sisters. That quite a kind of tragic film, but the way it's shot and the colours and the skin tones was something that he really liked there.
Right.
So yeah.
And I mean, as I said previously, this is your second outing with Peter. How was that? Did you notice a notable change in working with Peter on a second film, having had one film under your belt? And how did you approach the visual style together? If you could tell us a little bit about something.
I mean, we getting into the Barbarian Sound Studio was a fraught film. There was way too much to shoot, way too little time. We were always running out of time, and Peter was always really quite liking to do details, and he was fascinated with the way the light was falling on a curtain, and I was having to drive him, and myself and the first AD and the producer were having to drive him quite a bit to say, well, you know, we've actually got to get the main sequence down, and then we can play a bit. And in a way, we were fairly kind of pushy on that. The way we filmed it was fairly classical. Get the footage done, get the footage down, get the performances, so that he could, you know, actually tell his story. And sometimes Peter sort of sat back a bit on that. He was always in there with the artists, and you know, he had some very specific ideas, the transitions, and there were very specific ideas he had. When we came to start filming the Duke of Burgundy, I felt that he had really learned from the work that we'd done on the sound studio, and was a much clearer director about what he wanted, how he wanted it done, which was really nice. And it was really nice to work with him in that way. I mean, these kind of films, they're always I guess I think of them as a kind of conversation with the director, that you know, we'll be rehearsing a scene, setting it up, we've got a rough idea, and you know, perhaps he's got a fairly clear idea of how we want it covered, but then, you know, things evolve, and maybe I've seen something, come up with some idea. I feel that if the artist sat in a slightly different position, I could get a more interesting light on them, which would suit my purposes. So there would then be this conversation going on about, okay, so let's do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and okay, you'll have a little bit of your way, I'll have a little bit of my way.
Yes.
And if it works well, that I feel very comfortable with that. you know, bit of push and pull.
Of course.
As well.
Yeah,
so there's, well, this isn't looking terribly interesting, Nick. You know, how about if we tried this? Or, you know, can't we have a bit of a flair in here? Maybe a bit more foreground or that kind of stuff. So, but Peter, I think Peter had really learnt and had a clearer idea of what he wanted.
It's lovely when you can get that to that point with the director based on their confidence or their understanding of the language and having a history as well. So the shorthand about and you know and you can and also not be afraid to say I don't know, you know, and that takes a certain level of knowing in order to say I don't know.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Based on what you were saying then. Just in terms of the rehearsing and the blocking, where you're sort of, you know, there's a level of trust where you're invited in early on to sort of presumably witness the rehearsals and then contribute at a certain point. You'd mentioned to me that you use a DSLR with small zooms as a kind of, as I understood it, as sort of visual storyboard, as it were. So you could you talk a little about the process of working this way with Peter on set?
Well, I've been working that way for a long time now, and I've got a little Canon that has a sensor exactly the same size as the Alexa has, and I've got a couple of zooms at 10 to 20 or something, and 18 to 200. So whenever I'm framing with that, I'm framing in exactly the same lens that I know that I can use, same perspective and everything that I'll have on the main camera.
Right.
And I think I find it very useful because it allows me to share and show. And also, you know, Peter, so, you know, he'll be standing next to me, we'll be saying a little bit here, a little bit there, maybe a bit tighter. And particularly the sequences like in the glass areas, where the first one where you find Sid's face comes in sort of blue in the foreground and little Evelyn's on the bed behind. That was very much found on that small camera, so I can pinpoint it exactly where that's going to be. And then I say, okay, the lens is going to be right here. And then hold my hand and the grip has to, okay, it's right there. And it's just like, instead of having a little chewy or whatever they call them, that, oh, this looks great. So you hand it over and you find they're looking over there. You say, hold on a minute, my shot's over here. What are we looking at here? So you're never really sharing, in my mind, exactly the same shot.
And the ability to play it back, presumably. You can film little bits.
Well, that's right, and also show it to the art departments, the sound department. Everybody can see this is what we're intending to do before we start to even get the main camera in and go through all that process of laying track, you know, whatever we have to do. Everybody's, you know, already zoned into, okay, that's the background, this is going to be the foreground.
I like the sound. It sounds it sounds very inclusive, because I think often there's a danger that even though we work as cinematographers and we're responsible for the camera, sometimes there's not that level of invitation, and it's you know, everybody's work is funneled through it, so it's sometimes one can lose sight of that maybe.
Yes, I mean, I've worked with a lot of different types of directors. Some who are very, very clear about exactly what they want. They've got it all storyboarded down exactly, and sometimes that's worked brilliantly. Sometimes I felt, hold on a minute, you know, there's a world out here, and you're just narrowing it down too much. But I do like the way of working with the small camera and kind of finding a way through sequences, and you know, and you can quickly say, well, you know, we've got a wide shot over here, then we can pop into a tighter one there, and you can show them what it is that you're thinking of doing, and then they can react to that at the time, instead of getting everything out, getting all the kit out, and saying, oh, that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
You get fewer mistakes, and in a film like the Duke of Burgundy, although the script was, it was a good, very good script, very interesting script to read. Peter did make a slightly different film in the end. He did discover another zone, as it were, which I think is really wonderful. And quite a lot of the material and the setups and the graft that we put in didn't actually make it to the screen, which kind of is vexing in some ways, but in other ways it's kind of okay. I think it's okay. I rather support somebody like Peter to shoot long, to get the scenes that you know there's never going to be a long enough movie to put all this material in, but to provide Peter with that material to work on in the edit, because that's another process for him. And that's he's quite kind of organic and kind of feely in a way like that. I think he's great. He makes for a different kind of film, and that's what's yeah.
Coming back for a moment, because I think it's. I don't think we can let you go without asking about them. But the beautiful refractions and reflections and the ghosting and double reflections going on in the film are beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and incredibly well found and caught and choreographed. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about how they came about. Was that something? Because they feel organic and found, and I can imagine, like you said, that sometimes was it a case that you had that in your mind and you would look for it, or were they very much pre-planned? How did that work?
A bit of both. It was always something that we talked about early on, and in fact I had a kit of mirrors that we used a bit of close to the lens to double reflect things. We also made sure we had bits of glass with bevels and mirrors with bevels, so that when you go right into those, you get that kind of odd refraction kind of stuff going on. So it was always something, in a sense, we were on the lookout for. And as you say, sometimes it was, I found something really interesting. Peter's really going to like this.
Right.
I mean, the element, the scene where the carpenter, the blonde wig arrives.
Trouble.
I mean that we'd already done we'd already done some work around that, but we were on the balcony, and we knew that Evelyn was looking out over the balcony, seeing the carpenter arrive, and then there was going to be a sequence where she came into the room and started measuring up the bed, measuring up Evelyn, and it was going to be quite kind of provocative and sexy in a way. And I was on the outside of the outside of the balcony. We had a small balcony outside their main room, and I saw something, and I got my little camera out, and I just found that. We tilted the doors a little bit, just to tweak it a little bit. But in the end, we found this wonderful sequence where, one reflection merged into a reality, merged into another reflection, and then there's nothing, and then suddenly there's somebody there. Wow. So yeah, we did look out for that, and we did a lot of the love scenes in the candlelight. We were a bit more kind of creative. We had bits of glass and bits of stuff and beveled mirrors and beveled bits of glass to create that refraction in front of that. Right. Peter always wanted, we always talked about a very warm, romantic, soft, alluring kind of image, particularly for the lovemaking. Right. Because it was never ever going to be, in any sense pornographic. it was always designed to sort of take you so far. You know, you're riding in with them, but you're never shown the details.
No.
And that was always a sort of very much part of his style in Barbarian Sound Studio as well. You know, that the audience never saw on the screen the violence that was being, the sounds were being made to.
Yes.
So that's part of Peter's kind of witty self, that, you know, he tempts the audience, he brings them in, but then goes,
Right.
And I have to say, just while we're there, the arrival shot of the carpenter, we couldn't get it. We weren't getting it. It wasn't. We didn't have time for it. We had one day we were shooting in that kitchen on the veranda, and we finished, and I could still see. I said, "Why don't we do the carpenter now?" Because she was there that day.
Right.
And the first AD said, "Don't be silly. It's dark." I said, no, there's enough light, I promise you. And we got the camera out. I put a 85, 1.4, and you know, the carpenter came up.
Is that the scene where she comes up the steps?
Comes up the step, yeah. And I was looking at the monitor, and I was looking with my eyes. Where is she? Oh, there she is.
Right.
It was so dark.
Wow. You wouldn't.
And with the Alexa just.
Yes.
I mean, that's the beauty of that camera. It's so far down. There's detail, and you know, it was brought up by a great colorist as well, of course. But it was, you know, if we'd been on any other medium, I don't think we would have got that. I wouldn't have dared to do it.
No. Well, that brings me very neatly to my next question, actually, which was about the both of your films with Peter have been shot using the Alexa. The Arri Alexa. Was this your decision to shoot digital? That's a lot of shh in there. Was it your decision to shoot digital? And how have you responded to the advancement of digital cinematography?
I had resisted digital and video for many years. I always had a story about a bucket of rust. Which was video, and you filled it up from the bottom up to the top to your highlights, and it overflowed. So it was a very hard cut from you know, your highlight and it not being nice at all.
Yes.
That was always one of my issues I had with the early videos. When DSLRs and the red started coming in, although I had done one project with the Sony Digicam, but that was all studio, very carefully controlled. We used a huge amount of diffusion and got quite a nice kind of painterly sense out of it. And I also had an incredibly good HD technician with me, Stefan Kubik, who you know, he did a lot of day work with Anthony Del Mantle and people like that. He did Slumdog Millionaire. I mean, he was really excellent and nurtured me through that experience. But the red, when it came out, I could see there were some nice images, but I just couldn't get a hold of the way it worked. It was too much of a computer approach for me. So I was sticking with film, and I then heard whispers that Arri was bringing down this camera and it was going to just change everything. And I went, oh yeah, heard all that before. When I did one little shoot with it on a commercial, and early days, you know, it was okay. I didn't really understand it that much. But then when we were testing for Barbarian Sound Studio, originally we wanted to shoot on 35. Peter was quite keen to shoot on Super 16 if we couldn't afford 35. I was worried because, you know, we knew it was going to be for the big screen, and I knew we were going to be hard pushed for speed and all of that kind of stuff. So I thought, well, we would have to shoot 500 ASA and that on Super 16 is really pushing the envelope on the granularity.
Yes, yes.
So I said, well, why don't we do a test with, because it was a very low budget, £1 million budget on that. And we tested Super 16, 35mm. We tested the Sony F.
35?
I forgot what it was now. F, a small 55 or something
Yes.
at that time. And at the last minute, I managed to borrow from ICE an Alexa to put into the mix. So we set up this scene with a sort of 18 stop latitude, loads of colour, and we lots of big slabs of grey, and we as I've always done, I put correct exposure, and then I underexpose by a third of a stop, a third of a stop, a third of a stop, go down, 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 and then go up, 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 and then I take it into, and we did all that with all the cameras. I took that into post at Company 3, 142 it was then, and we take the middle, and we say, okay, let's make everything match the middle to see what the latitude, the actual working latitude of these instruments were. And the Alexa, to be honest, blew it away. The latitude was astonishing. And the look was very good as well. We screened the material with the director and the producer, and we looked at the film. The 35 looked very nice, but was unaffordable. The Super 16, the skin tones looked lovely, but you know, it was a little bit grainy, to be honest. And we were using a fairly early version of an ARRI system to squash out the grain. That looked great on cars, but on faces it was, it really didn't look very nice. And the Sony was kind of okay. The Alexa was just, you know, it just really worked. It just really looked good. The skin tones were very nice, the latitude was very good. And there was a kind of, I think by then they'd also felt they had to shoot digital, because of the amount of takes, and we had language issues, we had actors coming in from abroad who couldn't speak English properly, so we knew we were going to have to have a pretty high ratio.
Sure.
And Keith kind of looked at me and said, I see what you mean. Right. I'll see what we can do. And in the end, we got a very good deal out of, not out of ICE, it was out of John Buckley at Movie Tech. They were very helpful. And we finished up shooting all that on the Alexa with 444. Most of it we used the big 24 to 240 zoom ingenue that was, you know, really saved our bacon, because
was this film or Barbarian?
That was Barbarian Sound Studio.
Barbarian.
So then Peter went away. He did find the whole thing very stressful, and the whole post-production and all of that. He was pretty worn out by the end of all of that, and he wanted to do something a kind of smaller, less important, and he knocked out this little script. And they were going to shoot it on Super 16. He was going to use the cameraman who shot Catalina Varga with him. But then one thing and another, it kind of started to snowball, and the BFI, Channel 4, and the whole thing got a little bit more money in it. And they said, well, yeah, you know, your DP you want to use really hasn't got much of a CV. Would you consider using Nic again? So I got a call. I was up a mountain somewhere in Corsica on holiday. I knew this was all going on, that he was doing this. And he said, Nic, would you break your holiday and come and work with me? So there was a lot of running up and down the mountains, because we didn't have mobile connection where we were. So I was with my dear wife Harriet, and it was a very tense time, but eventually I said yes. And I had to come back early, and then I went straight off. They put the shoot back a couple of weeks, and it all kind of worked out. Right. And it was always, yes, let's shoot on the Alexa again. Because I've been very happy. And it was interesting for me to go to that because the Barbarian Sound Studio had been very controlled, and to the nth degree, all the lighting. When we went to on location, I knew it was going to be a bit more throw it around, take a few chances, and I felt, well, this is going to be a good test to see, in a way, how it will work if I use it, how I would use film.
Yes.
Because on film, I was very used to getting things fairly close on the day, knowing that in post, you could nurture it, provided you have enough in the negative, you could often find and rescue it, as it were, or create nice images from it. And I was sort of a little bit nervous on doing this with the Alexa, but it did work pretty good. I kind of let it fall off a little bit too far here and there. A little bit of misunderstanding with the DIT now and again.
And you shot ProRes as opposed to ARRI RAW, is that correct?
Yeah, in those days, to shoot RAW would have we had to have an extra box on the camera. It would have been more expensive. All the storage was still early days for RAW. And I think generally people were saying still that really there's not enough difference to make it worthwhile. And it really wasn't until I was working with Greg Fisher at Company 3 doing the grading that he said, I would have found that little bit more with RAW, and it would have helped me a little bit more. And I think I could have given you that little bit more out of it here and there. But hey, I was pretty pleased. And when you think of it, that is an extraction from a spherical capture. It's not an anamorphic.
No.
So the negative is like that big.
Yes.
The sensor, that's the original image. Blown up to that.
Stands up remarkably.
It does stand up remarkably.
I wanted to ask you about the day for night. Well, I assume to be the night exteriors in general, which there's some fabulous day for night sequences, or day for dusk, or dusk for night, however you want to cut it. And presumably are there some lit night exteriors as well for the closer work, or is it all?
No.
No, at all.
No, the only bit I had to do some lighting on is the bit where she's coming down the staircase and with the lantern.
Yes.
And that was a rush at the end of the day.
Right.
We were boxed in, desperately trying to get a decent, softish light far enough back. Had people shoving bits of poly up trees and bouncing lights off it. And we never really got it quite right, and we had to turn over. And it kind of works out okay.
Yes. What was your general approach to the day for night work?
Well, on that we wanted, in a sense, to have quite a chalky, coolish look without too much contrast. So I tried to make it that we never shot anything that was going to be used for day to night in full sun.
Right.
Because the back of the house got some lovely, lovely sun at different times. So all those shots at the back of the house are done late afternoon. I generally underexpose a little bit, maybe 2 stops. And in there I'm adjusting the colour temperature a little bit because it helps in the grade when you're on ProRes. And we grade it down and keep the contrast low, and try to make it look, about the right time. I think the main day for night sequence is in what we call vagina dreams.
Yes. Yeah.
Where we're in the wood, and Cynthia is coming down through the trees, and we get that lovely high crane shot that morphs into an over shoulder as she approaches the cask. And Peter always wanted that to be a 20 or 30 second shot that came over her shoulder and tracked in, which was quite a challenge to do. So in the end, we got a. I think we got the Technocrane out for that, and some track.
Right.
So there's a lot going on in the operating and all of that kind of stuff. Maybe it wasn't a Technocrane. Maybe it was Jimmy Jib again. I can't remember, or something similar to Jimmy Jib. But they wanted to shoot that in the afternoon for the schedule. But I said, if it's a bright day, it's not going to work because we're going to have too much hard sun coming through there, and it's not going to be in the right direction. So I couldn't turn it into backlight, which I might have got away with.
Sure.
So I said, we're going to have to wait till twilight because it's the way the sun sat on that setup. So we got everything set up, we rehearsed, and then as the sun dipped and stopped making any kind of pings in the forest, we started turning over on it. And I had lights set up, I had some 6K set up on the outside of the wood for the reverse, because by that time it was getting a little bit too dark. So we just G'd that up a little bit with a bit of extra light. But it was always trying to get this kind of sort of talky feel, low contrast down the bottom end. The same really that I tried to do in the bedrooms scenes where the moonlight's coming in. And it's the most difficult thing to do.
Yes.
Is to underlight far enough that your highlights are kind of what you call your highlights are really your sort of low greys, and your shadows are only just a little bit set under. So you're working in a kind of 2.5 stop kind of range, or even less sometimes, and to the eye it just looks weird. But on camera it can look, because often it's kind of unnaturally bright for moonlight as well, because of shooting at 2.8 and all that kind of stuff. And
and often a balance between practical sources and moonlight, and trying to, and also in whether you're going for realism or whether you can afford to be more stylized in some of the situations is always a choice.
I always had that on my side.
Yeah.
theatrical. I can do, and I like, and I think that the whole, what I like about the film, and about some of the work in it, and Barbarian, I like bringing light into faces, into the artist's faces, so that the audience is drawn into them by the lighting, and I think that they're sort of saying is less more, or less is more, and it came out very strongly for me in the autumn last year when Levantia won the Golden Frog at Camera Image instead of Birdman. And Birdman, I absolutely adore the film. It's just a great, I love it. I love Emmanuel Lubezki's work in it. It's just so absorbing. And I find Levantia, it was all right, but I think it just it was less is more, and the juries gave it there and made the point that less is more. So I got this kind of idea to do an event at the BSC show in January, but we never actually got that together. But the idea of the debate about when less is more and when more is too much, when you try too hard to create a look, to bring something alive with your photography. And I think it's a very delicate area, and I never know whether I'm on the right side of it. I mean, I'm sitting there looking at this thing. It's a pretty strong look, some of this, but then I'm completely wrapped up in it. So it's what other people say, really, that was the photography too strong for the story? Would it have been better served if I'd done much less, created a more, what should I say, a more kitchen sink look, filled out the rooms, made it more normal. I don't know. It's not my kind of approach, I guess, and others will tell me. But I think it's a very important debate that I always have when I'm watching films and when I'm thinking about filming things and how to light and how much to and lensing comes in there as well, doesn't it? Really, how much you stick with one perspective, or you're using different perspective lenses, you're using tracks to describe your movement, or whether you're using zooms to move, which I think is another area that.
Yes, the use of the zoom. When we spoke about this, the use of the zooms in the film. I mean, for me, the whole film. This goes back to what you were saying about where Peter's arrived at. I think compared to the last film, tonally, right from the beginning, it feels like it absolutely knows what it is. I mean, it reminds me of those old Hammer movies that I grew up with. It reminds me of some of the sort of Tales of the Unexpected in its tone. It's very unsettling. It reminds me of those 70s movies where the Coppola and Nick Rogue, again, quite unsettling tonally, but using the zooms, as in-camera zooms, which is often quite rare. People don't tend to do that nowadays, and I wondered where that came from, that use of the zoom. Again, did it fall into place in the same way as the refractions and reflections, or was that a definite decision from you to use those in-camera zooms, or is it from Peter?
I mean, we used it quite a bit in Barbarian Sound Studio. Peter likes that. He liked it then, so I assume he liked it again. I like it. I mean, it's very much, I suppose, got into my DNA from the 70s. I mean, you're talking to a fossil here, a living fossil from the 70s. I was brought up with, a zoom on a camera on my shoulder and a zoom. And that's what we did. You wanted to go in close, you zoomed.
Yes.
And a lot of the time that zoom was used. Sometimes films like Stones in the Park, which is another film that I worked on the side, a cameraman called Mike Dodds was at the back with a 20-1, going in and out with with the music. So that's what we did in the 60s and 70s. We used zooms fairly freely, and I always like that slight movement, and in a shot that's slightly taking you in. And I think that's something I got from a director I worked with, Tony Palmer, who did Testimony and films about Benjamin Britten and Stravinsky and all those kind of, my education, that was really all those kind of films. But he loved to zoom. He liked just slow zooms, and I've always liked that. So it's very much part of what I like to do. I think also in terms of speed of setup, and having to, if you're on a prime, you have to kind of like micromanage your camera position, which can be kind of quite time-consuming at times, or compromising. Because you're not on the right lens, you're not quite in the right position, but there's no time to shift it. As you're on a zoom, okay, I'm fine, turn over.
Zoom in a little slider or something.
Yeah, and there's some people who are just sort of very purist about all that kind of stuff.
I just wanted to ask you one last question before we open up to the floor, and that was that in preparation for this interview, you expressed how important it is for you to create a world, a universe that isn't necessarily, and I might be forgive me if I haven't understood this completely, but a universe that isn't necessarily reliant on realism or naturalism. Could you talk a little more just about this in relation to your personal philosophy and your career so far? Does that?
Yes. And I think it's more, it goes back again to the sort of 60s. When I started working with a group called, I became part of the company, Tattooist International, with Dick Fontaine and Dennis Postle and people. And Dennis and Mike Myers. And the first film that we made was actually just writing, and it was on the screen, it was, "Hello, I'm a film. I've got something to say about you out there, watching, waiting." And that always kind of appealed to me, that sense that, hold on, that is something. It's not what it was, it's what it is. And that's always kind of stayed with me in that sense. And then, year before last, we had Vittorio Storaro, the great Vittorio Storaro, who was an influence in my lighting styles. He was introducing a book at the BSC show, and one of the elements was to do with Plato's cave. And I've always sort of had a philosophical view of what that Plato's cave myth was all about. And for me, it was about, it's described that people are in a cave and they're chained and they're looking at the back wall. And at the, up and behind them, there's the entrance to the cave, and there's a bright light. And there are people and horses and whatever walking in front of that, and that's casting shadows on the back of the cave. And the chained people who can't turn around take that for being a reality. And in the philosophical work sense, the idea was that you should realize that you're chained, and at that point realize that this isn't the whole of the reality, that there is another element of the reality, and you turn around and look at the light. Hey, man. I never quite got to that far, but or anywhere near that far. But Vittorio introduced it as the cinematographers are the creators of the shadows on the screen, and they are the reality that we are presenting to the audience. I went, oh. That's a lovely, lovely kind of releasing idea for me, because everything has a reality, and it linked in with the whole idea that, hello, I'm a film.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, this is the reality. What we went through, what everybody in the whole team and that wonderful group of people went through, the artists, there's so many people involved.
Yes.
It all comes down to, nowadays, a virtual kind of digital domain flickering away on the screen. And we all buy into that very willingly, thank goodness. Otherwise, we'd all be out of a job. So that's kind of how it kind of ties in with me, that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. Okay, any questions from the floor? Is there a mic? Wonderful. Sorry, just wait. We'll get a mic over to you because it's being.
You have to pay attention and repeat the question because I will not hear.
Okay.
It.
Okay.
Hi, Nick. I was just interested in what you were saying about "Hello, I'm a film," and are you basically an unreconstructed structuralist? Do you think?
Did you hear it?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Just once more.
Well, no, I've not really heard structuralism referenced in a situation like this much before, and I'm interested in your idea of "Hello, I'm a film." Is that regarding the film as an object that shouldn't sort of merely reproduce, but should be about the idea of looking at the film as something that you're aware is a film?
Right, we're talking about what I've just been talking about.
Yes, exactly. The last moment about the hello, I'm a film.
And that also leads me on to, did you reference Stan Brakhage with the moth light section in there, where he glued moths to the emulsion?
Stan Brakhage.
Yes, that's
the moth
New York
storm.
filmmaker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
moth light.
Yes,
yeah.
that was...
where he glued
that's
moths to
Peter's-
the emulsion.
That's Peter's digital version.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's extraordinary.
With
Absolutely
Jelly
beautiful.
Bean made for him, yeah. Yeah, he went completely mad on it.
Right.
It was lovely.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful.
I mean, that touches on, what is an object. We're all kind of fizzy, empty space, aren't we? We're all energy. That's the illusion that we buy into. We are real at a physical level, and that is an object at a physical level. But could I say that a film is a physical reality? It's like a book. It's kind of there when you're watching it, but not there when you're not. I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Lock the doors. We're going to be here for some time debating it. We're going to.
My wife's closing her ears.
Anyone else?
No questions is good anyway. It means we can carry on talking.
Anyone else? Okay, well, I have one more whilst you're thinking of a question. And that was just the absence of male characters within the film, which I found incredibly refreshing. Could you tell us whether this changed your approach to the storytelling in any way, the absence of male characters, for those who didn't get that, or whether there was an effort to include more women on the crew in a response to an all-female cast? Did it?
No.
No, good.
No,
Right,
no.
anyone question?
No, it didn't really change anything. I mean, we're making a film. Happens to be two women. And we got as many women on the crew as we could. We did try to get a woman focus puller, but she wasn't available. So
That's it. Because you felt it would be more. It would be beneficial.
Not particularly, no. I know women are incredibly good focus pullers, and I'd worked with one in Hungary before, so I thought that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Primarily we wanted to use as much Hungarian crew as possible for budgetary reasons. Yeah.
Anyone? Oh.
I'd just like to ask of the problems you had, if you had problems, or the challenges in working abroad with a crew that you were working with, and what they brought to the film. Not just the crew, but also the crafts involved.
Yeah, no, our working practice in Hungary was actually very good. We were doing, the crew were all very professional. I think initially I had quite a high-end gaffer and his best boy. And when we started setting up and started working, for some reason suddenly the gaffer was leaving and I was going to work with the best boy that actually worked out incredibly well. He was brilliant, really brilliant. He made a really excellent gaffer. So all the crew there were really top-notch. And we had a wonderful first AD who was a fearsome woman.
You'd see.
Wow, she was fierce.
You'd see.
Yeah. Oh my God, she was.
Yes.
She was great to work with her, and she was really on top of her game and a real character.
Yeah.
And we stuck to the day's work. We did 6 days, 5 days. So it was good. I didn't have a problem there. I've just recently come back from working in Pakistan again. I've worked quite a lot out there, and despite teaching them and bullying them and cajoling them for the last 20 odd years on and off, there's still a little ways to go. Camera crew's got quite good there. Art department still needs help. but there I was. We were doing another feature out there that for the Pakistani market that they're trying to recreate, and is really being made possible through digital. Through the advent of digital cameras and the Alexa. I got them. They kept on asking me, the people I work with out there, should we buy a digital camera? Should we buy this? Should we buy this? I said, no. When the Alexa came out and I used it, I said, yeah, I have to say, this is the time you could invest and probably do okay with. And it's worked out very well. Their original camera is still working away. We were working on the new XT in RAW out there. They're slowly building, and it's felt very good to be part of helping that part of their community, their sort of middle class intelligentsia maybe, but to create that in a country and to help nurture it has been very satisfying. I've always had a young DP or an assistant working with me, now I'm saying, you should be using him for your shoot, not me. Right. And it's beginning to work out. Some of them are getting very good, and some are now coming back from training abroad, going back there. So I'm hoping I can kind of calm down on that. But we had a lot of fun, but that was hard. That was hard. Overseas, you're talking about.
Quick question.
Oh, do you have a... Sorry, you have to wait for the mic for a moment.
Well, shout loudly.
No, it's sorry. It's just it's being recorded, and I've been told I have to rule with an iron fist. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, it's just a quick question. How many shoot days on this film, and ballpark, what was the budget, if you can tell us?
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
You weren't attending.
I was the number of shoot days. I do apologise. Sorry. The number of shoot days and the budget, if you can.
It was a total of 35 days, including 2 designated second unit after the main, and the budget was somewhere around the £1 million mark. So low budget, but. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just one at the back.
Hello. What filtration were you using?
Filtration. What filters do you have?
No filtration.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't like filtration. Generally speaking, don't like it. I think, that's another kind of I'm waiting to see issue on this ever wanting to increase the resolution of cameras. I completely agreed with the ARRI view that the 1980, 1080, 1980, 1020, 980 was plenty of resolution on screen. But endlessly people are pushing up to 4K, 6K, 8Ks, goodness knows what. And I think that the most important thing for me is the kind of, the color depth, the built-in leeway within the system. And my experience so far with the Alexa has been very good on that front. And I can't think why you want anything sharper than this.
So, if I may jump in at this point, when you said earlier that you were, obviously there is a reference, there's a certain feel that even though the film is timeless or non-specific in where it sits, it does. I could see a place for. Did you ever consider any softening filters, or the way that you light faces? Did you ever consider? It was never. You never entertained the thought of doing that.
No. I didn't. I mean, in the grade, I make sure we keep all the kind of sharpness bits down as far as is sensible.
Yes.
But no, I suppose. I don't know, people have said about the Barbarian Sound Studio and this, that it doesn't look like digital. And they asked me, well, how come it? You know, you shot it on a digital camera. And I don't really know the answer to that. Other than somehow I'm making decisions on a monitor with my eye, but primarily on a monitor nowadays. It's less with the eye, to be honest. That is based on what I like, and what I've always liked is nice images, and I've not always been happy with my work, but generally I try to make myself happy. You know, get to a point where I'm, you know, this is quite nice. I'll go with this. I'll sign it off. Thank you very much. And somehow that translates to these kind of looks. And I wouldn't want to make anything look sharper, edgier, and that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't on film either. You know, so it's in a way, for me, the shift from film to digital has been kind of quite smooth, and I've felt that it doesn't really matter what you film on, provided, you know, within reason. It's got to suit the subject, you know, so you wouldn't want to do this on an iPhone, things like that. But, you know, given film versus digital, we have a saying which is format neutral. Teaching cinematography, because I talk quite a lot about that with a certain person in my life, about teaching, and we talk about it in terms of, you know, you don't talk about it in terms of you're shooting on film, you're shooting on digital. You're talking about you're making images. That's what's important. You're making images that are going to, you know, be on the big screen, on the TV or something like that. So it's you know, just make it look nice.
Well, you did a splendid job there.
But was it too much?
Not for my taste.
Okay.
Anyone else? Sorry, is there just waiting on a mic coming back down to you? Just bear with us. It's being thrown from the back.
It's getting closer.
Yeah, it's been walked now. Every mode of transport.
And here, Milan, Mr. Ari, help.
Nothing to do with the cameras. Once upon a time, people used to watch rushes and dailies. I mean, what was your approach and director's approach? Did you have dailies? Did you watch them? Did you watch them together, individually, on computer? Did you have LUTs, lookup tables? How did you develop them? And it's great look, so I mean, it didn't come out of thin air.
No, good questions. I used Rec 709. I always sort of feel that if I can make it look good on 709, then in the grade it's going to be all right. I've never really wanted to, you know, nail it more than that. Similar approach to film, really, that I don't want to be bothered about nitty-grittying a kind of a look or a LUT or a, you know, this or a that. It was loaded up, but I got the DIT to make me little clips when he had time, of often the last take, and he would load that onto a small drive that I had, and then I would, on my laptop, I would look at that, and sometimes I would put it into Resolve, because that would have been 444. I put that into Resolve and just sort of check roughly that I felt in the right area. I'd either put a 709 on it and look at it there, or I would tweak it a little bit. So no, I've never been a great kind of techie person in terms of making my own LUTs or anything like that. As far as watching rushes, there was way too much to watch. It had taken us all day to shoot. It would have taken us all night to watch, because we hardly ever stopped filming. So we went into the edit room now and again, and saw some sequences being assembled, as it were. And I think, you know, particularly when you're on the digital, you're on a monitor, you're kind of watching your rushes. I mean, you know, that's it's WYSIWYG. That's what you're getting. I don't have to know, and I think that's another little point about shooting digital, is that, and I think it's a kind of problem probably with DPs coming into the system, that you know, you turn it on, okay, I can see it, it's coming out, producer, you know, faster, cheaper, quicker, and turn over, you know, so that, and I think for me, the thing on digital is you do have to really look at it. You do have to get in there, if you can, to give those little tweaks where you can. You know, and then it can look really, really nice. But if you sit back too much and say, well, it looks all right, you know, we'll sort it out in post, doesn't always happen. Doesn't always happen that way. I think Greg, the colorist, was, you know, always pointed that out to me. He said, this is so nice to grade because, you know, you put something in there for me to work with. I get people coming in with material and they want me to make something out of it. And it doesn't, you know, I can do some things with it, but, so I think, and I remember watching, what was the film that Darius shot?
Amor?
Amor. And realising that, but it had been shot on the Alexa, and a lot of it looked very nice. But there were some sequences where somebody was walking across the hallway, and I felt he hasn't done something. He hasn't given it a little tweak. It's too flat. It's too easy. It's too like your eye sees, and I kind of want to. It's not your eye. We're doing more than. You know, I can look out. I'm using my eyes all the time. I can look out the window and it's gorgeous, but that's not what's going to be up here. This is something else for me. This is something else. This is something. You look at Birdman. You know, wow, every frame is worked on. Absolutely stunning, beautiful film. And you know, if anybody wants anything better than that out of any medium, you know, I don't know where it's going to come from. Does that answer enough?
Do we have time for one more, Francis? Okay, final question, if there is one. Was there one? No? Is that it? Okay. Well, thanks ever so much for coming, and to Nick for the screening. So.